This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. I am Jason. This is Sports Spectrum. We're so glad that you tuned into our show today. Got a great conversation coming up with Adam Engel, the Chicago White Sox outfielder. That's coming up in just a second. First, I want to direct you to a few places. The first is our website, sportspectrum.com, a great place to go to stay up to date with all that we have going on here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. We have daily devotionals, podcasts, articles, stories that date back 30 years and are updated every single day during the week at sportspectrum.com. So make sure you check out the website. And then if you have a story that you think we should be talking about or sharing here at Sports Spectrum, maybe it's a guest idea for the podcast, maybe it's a story of something that God has done in the midst of the sports community that you're a part of, man, we want to tell that story if it's possible. So email us directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. That's my email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. You can reach me directly. We would love to hear your suggestions, your stories, any guest ideas you have, anything you want to say, jason@sportspectrum.com. We are presented today by Ronald Blue Trust, applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions to experience clarity and confidence and leave a lasting legacy. We want to do that, don't we, with our finances? And listen, 2020 is gone. Happy New Year. It's 2021, but we still got a lot of questions regarding our finances. And with the new year comes those questions. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. Hopefully it's going to be ending soon. Ronald Blue Trust has the principles, the biblical principles that can help you be good stewards of your wealth. Check them out at ronblue.com, a great website, a great place to go, and an awesome partner with us here at Sports Spectrum. Ronald Blue Trust, ronblue.com. Very excited today to welcome Adam Engel to Sports Spectrum. He's an outfielder with the Chicago White Sox, selected in the 19th round of the 2013 MLB Amateur Draft by Chicago, the White Sox. He played his college ball at the University of Louisville, and just 4 years after being drafted, made his MLB debut May 27, 2017, for the White Sox against the Detroit Tigers. In 2018, August of 2018, Adam had one of the great 6-game spans you'll ever have as a defensive outfielder when he robbed 3 home runs. Yes, 3 home runs in a 6-game span, including 2 back-to-back in August of 2018. This is a very hard thing to do. Most MLB players, outfielders, if they rob 1 home run in an entire season, it's a pretty good feat. Adam did it 3 times, and he did it in a 6-game span in August of 2018. This year, in August of 2020, this past year, the abbreviated 2020 season, Adam hit a career-high 295 with 3 homers in 36 games. And in the 2020 postseason, he hit his first career postseason home run in the very first game of that postseason, a 4-1 win over the Oakland A's. Adam also has a very strong faith in Jesus, and we're going to talk about all of that and more right now here on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen to Adam Engel joining us here today on the show. What's up, Adam? How are you?
Doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Things are going good on this end, man. So just got done with the holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready to roll?
How are you doing, man? Yeah.
I'm good, man. I'm good. We were supposed to do this in person at our conference that we meet at every year, but of course, pandemic and COVID took that away. So we're going to do it the second best way, which is on Zoom, and hopefully next year, or pretty soon, we can meet in person and be able to do a conversation that way too. But I've wanted to have you on for a while, and let's start with the past few months, I guess, for the lack of a better word, as we've all been isolated. Describe what this year was like for you, from maybe going back to even before the pandemic, as you're preparing for a season. You go through spring training and then you stop and then you have to start up again. What comes to mind when you try to describe, when you tell your grandkids someday what 2020 was like?
Yeah, it seemed like, going into spring training, which is like the end of winter pretty much. It was like business as usual. We're getting ready to go into a season, particularly us for the White Sox, we had made some big signings, signed some pretty good players on the free agent market, and the whole rebuild concept. We're like, it's over finally. We're here to win games, and we're starting to place players around to help us win a championship. And that's kind of what it felt like going into the beginning of spring training. Like, hey, we got some really good players. We're all fired up with kind of a new energy as a club, and things were going great. I felt like spring training was going really well for me in particular. I had a pretty good spring. We called it spring training 1.0.
Right.
So things were going great. And then it was just kind of like out of nowhere, things went from kind of speculation, guys thinking like, okay, yeah, maybe, hey man, maybe this will shut us down, kind of like almost jokingly. And then like 2 days later, it was like, we have our GM and assistant GM in the clubhouse talking to us about, hey guys, we got to shut down for a while, and we're all just kind of like, what? You know what I mean? Like things were, went from, like I said, business as usual to just like joking around about it, and then it actually happening. And we're like, well, now what? Like how serious is this? We're kind of, as a country, we're learning more about it. And then us as players as well, we're kind of like, well, do we need to be worried about this? Like how serious is this? And, I had my family out in Arizona with me, and I personally, actually, my wife had just had our third kid, right before I had left for spring training. So, I had a newborn, and my wife had flown out to see me for the first time. So I was there with my family as our third child was born, but then I had to leave. I think it was like 2 weeks later I left. So I got to spend a couple of weeks at home with, a family of 5 for the first time. And then, they came out to see me. We got shut down like maybe a week or two after they had shown up, and we're like, oh man, this stinks. And then I was kind of like, well, at least I'll get to spend some time with my baby. I'm not going to miss those, that first month or two that I had kind of expected to miss. So,
Yeah.
We go home pretty quickly because we're like, we don't know if we're going to get shut down or we're going to get stranded here. And, my family's back here in Cincinnati. My wife's family's back here in Cincinnati. So we're like, we're getting out of Arizona as quickly as we can. And that's what we did. So we came back, and then things got, we're learning more about the virus. Things got worse. And, we were able to, as a country, I think, pull together and kind of weather this storm. And, here we are. So
Describe restarting though, and then maybe the routine to stay in shape, to sort of stay ready when you don't know what ready will be. Then there was a lot of back and forth on whether there would even be a season, and it really went down to the last wire. And then of course we had a season, and then it was the most strange 2 months, 3 months season probably in the history of baseball when you think about it. So describe kind of restarting and take us to where, you're back playing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, getting home, we pretty much shut down and stopped activity completely for, I want to say it was a couple weeks, and it wasn't really by choice. It was like, that's when, shutdowns were coming from, I think our governor,
Right.
I think in Ohio, our governor was one of the first ones, or one of the first states to start shutting places down. And so like, we couldn't go to a gym, or like we didn't have the option. So that was like, coming into a season, you're kind of at your peak, readiness as far as, lifting weights and running and your swing and everything. Like you were ready going into spring training day one. And then we'd spent some time playing games, and as a team, we were gelling and playing well. And then all of a sudden it's like nothing, just stop. Like we didn't even have the option. I know guys have home gyms and stuff. I don't have a home gym. I don't have a home cage, so I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right.
So what did you do?
So we were able to come up with a plan. Eventually it took a little while to get there, but my trainer here in Cincinnati was able to talk to some of the local government and say like, hey, I think at the time the term being thrown around was essential workers, or like essential work. If you need to do, something that's essential to your work, then you can make it happen. So I was able to work out like one guy at a time was coming into this gym. We had like a 2-hour window. I think like 6 people were able to work out a day, and this gym is huge, so I was able to do that, and I only worked out, I think, twice a week. So that's all that I would normally typically work out 4 times a week in an off-season program. And it went from 4 times a week to twice a week, and, kind of hang with them, man. So we went through that for a little while, and things started to loosen up a little bit more and more, I think. And we were able to actually start hitting as well. And so that whole thing kind of took shape, and then we went back to spring training 2.0 with a whole new set of rules. And it was like nothing obviously anybody had ever experienced before. We're going in and getting tested on a daily basis, and we're not allowed to leave our apartment. And at spring training 2.0, we started out like only half the team would work out, like, in the morning. I think it was like maybe a 3-hour window. And then the second half of the team would come in for another 3-hour window. And we weren't even seeing our entire team until a couple weeks into spring training 2.0. Wow. Yeah. So that was really weird. You're not even getting to see your teammates and, your good friends. And it was just a really different, setup, but it kept us safe. At the time, it was like as long as we didn't come into contact with too many people, we felt like we were doing the right thing. And, we were pretty strict with that. And I think things actually worked out pretty well. I think as a team, we had a couple guys had tested positive, like coming in to spring training. They actually had the virus like before we had reported.
Right.
And so they came in and tested, got flagged right away. And then, they quarantined for a couple of weeks and whatnot. But after that, I don't think we had a single case.
That's impressive. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think about how, because you saw what happened with the Marlins and some other teams where the Cardinals were really had to go through it for a while and make up a bunch of games in a very small amount. So it was unlike, you were playing 7-inning doubleheaders back to back weeks or back to back days in some cases with some of these teams. For you, what was that like when you put on a uniform? First of all, you're probably getting tested every day, so you have to go through that part and being tested and all the restrictions, but then playing in front of empty stadiums, in very large empty stadiums, had to be the most weird thing ever.
It was really weird. I think we played one of our exhibition games against the Cubs in Wrigley Field. And that was kind of when it hit me. Like, I got to start that night, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is finally weird to me. Like we had done our inter squads and our scrimmages against our own team for weeks leading up to that. And then we're finally playing another team, and I'm playing that night, and I'm like, this is weird. I'm warming up like for the first time, like no fans, especially in Wrigley where it's like a pretty hostile, crowd there. And I'm like, man, there's nobody here. This is insane. And, I think for me personally, it took a couple games to get used to it. But after that, I mean, it felt normal again. You know what I mean? Like, that was just kind of the way things were. It was like, this is a new reality that we're in. And that's what we came to know and expect. And even though it became normal, it still was different, if that makes sense. Like, there's no energy to feed off of. Right. So, you as a team had to come up with your own energy in the dugout. And so just because it was normal, a new normal, the game wasn't the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You could probably hear everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a lot more like, you can hear what the other dugout's saying and like getting kind of mad about it. Like, they hit a home run and you can hear very clearly what the other team's saying. And we would do the same thing. And I actually kind of enjoyed that because it seemed like a little bit more of a competition rather than, sometimes you can get out there and it's just you against the pitcher, or it's just you against the ball, a lot of guys will say. And for me personally, like, I'm a guy that likes to compete against other people, and then all of a sudden I hear them kind of talking trash over there. And I'm like, oh man, I love this. This is how sport was meant to be. You know what I mean? Like, getting to hear, the other guys and what they're saying and all of that. So, I enjoyed that aspect of it, which is probably the only aspect of it that I enjoyed, but, that's what we had.
You also had a pretty big home run. Your team actually had a really good year in the shortened time that it had, and it made the playoffs postseason for the first time in a while after some really down years. Like you said, made some free agent signings, and you had some expectations, and you were able to meet those expectations, I would say, by getting into the postseason. And then you hit a home run in game one, a postseason home run. I'm just wondering, even though it wasn't your typical postseason and there wasn't 55,000 screaming fans or 60,000 screaming fans, that had to be pretty cool to hit a home run in the postseason.
Yeah, that was such a surreal moment. I think, after I hit, like actually make contact with the ball and I'm running around first, I knew there was a chance that it was a home run, but it wasn't one of those like no doubter that like guys would hit, And so I hit it and I'm like, I think that might be a home run, but I'm running hard because I don't want to, if it hits the wall or something, like I still got to get to third base. And so I'm running hard and then it goes out. And I think it was in that moment after I had like rounded first base where I was like, man, that's so cool. Like, you worked so hard to get to the postseason and you do so many things. And this year in particular, we'd overcome so much. And then in the biggest game of my life, I get the biggest hit of my life. And even though there's no fans in the stands, like my wife and our little girls made the trip, which we were kind of bouncing back and forth on whether they should make the trip or not. And just because, we had to go all the way out to Oakland and it was just a lot. And we're in a bubble, taking 3 kids into a quarantined hotel. It's just a lot as parents. And then I have to try and perform it, in the biggest games that, I've ever played in. And so we were going back and forth on whether we should bring them or not, or my wife should even come or not. And we obviously made that decision to have them come. And so I'm running first base and I'm like I said before, the biggest hit of my life and the biggest game of my life. And my daughters and my wife was there in the stands to see it. They were allowed to go to a press box. Our family was. And they were there to see it. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like at the time, I'm like, man, that's so awesome. And then immediately, like I touch home plate and it's back to the team and, high-fiving and trying to give some more energy in that regard and make sure the guys are pumped up. And of course they are. It's not, you don't really have to do that in the postseason, it feels like, but it was a really cool moment and immediately back to business, and try and win that game. So
are you getting the ball because there's no fans catching home run balls? Are you able to get a lot of those souvenirs in a 2020 year different than other years?
Yeah. So that was another thing I wasn't expecting. I came back to my locker and a cool story actually. So after I hit the home run, my next at bat, I actually hit a ball probably harder than I hit the home run, but it was lower trajectory line drive. And so another one of my teammates, one of my good friends, there's 2 balls sitting in my locker. And one of them was the home run ball that I hit, like authenticated. And like you're saying, because of the year it was, they were able to go grab that ball, authenticate it right away. And there's no issue with that, which wouldn't have normally happened. Normally when a ball goes in the stands, they can't authenticate it because they don't know if that was actually the right ball or not. So I got that ball. And then sitting next to it in my locker is another ball. And I wish I would have known I was telling the story. I would have grabbed it. And my friend had torn the lace or the seams off of it. So it was like part of it was like torn, and then he had wrote on the ball, here's the double that you hit. It was an absolute, I can't remember the term that he used, but saying I hit it really hard. And he's like, great job today. You know what I mean? And so that ball to me is almost just as cool as, the home run that I hit. So I'm going to one day if I get to have like kind of like a display room or an office that I get to like kind of make my own. I'm going to display those balls right next to each other, and that'll be a cool story to tell.
Quick break from our conversation to tell you about our partners and sponsors today. Ronald Blue Trust. We thank them. They are amazing partners in ministry with us here at Sports Spectrum. Wealth management strategies and trust services based on biblical principles. They offer comprehensive financial services and objective advice to over 9,500 clients across the wealth spectrum in all 50 states. We're in a new year here. 2021 is here. And yet the questions that we have regarding our financial investments, our money, we still have those questions. A lot of us do. Ronald Blue Trust has the answers. We trust them. Financial retirement and estate planning, investment management, personal trust and estate settlement services, bill paying, family office, institutional services, retirement plan consulting. They do it all, and they lead from a biblical perspective. That's why we love Ronald Blue Trust. We're grateful to have them as sponsors. You can learn more right now by going to ronblue.com. ronblue.com. That's the website. Tell them Sports Spectrum sent you. Ronald Blue Trust, ronblue.com. Adam Engel's joining us here on Sports Spectrum. I want to ask you about your faith in this pandemic for you. What was the Lord showing you, and how hard was it to stay connected to the Lord in a pandemic-driven MLB season that was different than any other year?
Yeah, this was again, 2020, I feel like the one thing that I would describe it as was different. It was very different. Obviously, there's a huge downside to the virus and all of that. But I think the hardest part from a faith standpoint was, I believe we were made in community, and we were made to come alongside one another in our walks and have that opportunity to be with our, fellow Christian and our other friends that are non-believers. But so we're supposed to be with those people, and we didn't have that opportunity. We were literally told that we can't do that, and for good reason, I understand. But that was the hardest part for me in my journey. Was my community here in Cincinnati is unbelievable. We got a group of guys that we meet with even still now for, once every other week or so. And we just do life together, and it's incredible, and then I got a group of really close friends that I'm trying to, lead a little bit as far as, they're young believers as well, and trying to kind of like take the leadership role with that group of guys. And those were two groups of guys that I have here that I didn't get to necessarily hang out with, and that was really, really hard. So as a believer in this time, that was the hardest thing for me. And I felt like with that, the one thing that God was speaking to me about was like my disciplines. He's saying like, hey man, you've drifted from your disciplines. You haven't been getting in the word on a daily basis like you used to. You haven't been, making time to turn on church, even though it's on, the screen. You haven't been able to do that. And, I looked at all that and listen. I'm like, it's easy to make excuses and stuff like that. But, as an athlete, especially, like you make time for the things that mean the most to you, and so that was something that I felt like God was kind of speaking to me like, hey man, I know you got a lot going on. I know you got kids and things of that nature, but let's get back to kind of, what we were doing when we first fell in love, and when it was first me and you, and you're becoming a Christian and really understanding what that means. These were the things that we were doing together. And that was something I felt like I needed to get back to, something I learned, because I did have more time at home now. You know what I mean? I'm not going out. I'm not going to see those guys. So
right.
I did have that opportunity too. So those were the two big things for me.
Where did the faith that you have now, this faith in the Lord, where did that take shape? Where did it kind of really form for you?
Yeah. So I would say my favorite part about my faith journey has been how I feel like God is always seeking me. He's always sending someone or something that points back to him in such an undeniable way. And so I've been extremely blessed to have incredible mentors, like just incredible guys that I would consider like Paul's in my life, and it started out in college. I'm actually wearing, you can't see it, but I'm wearing a Louisville FCA shirt.
There you go.
I would say I went to school at the University of Louisville. We have FCA there, a guy named Chris Morgan. I still keep in touch with. He's a guy that was there and ran FCA. So that was kind of my church there at school, was with other athletes there, and in particular Chris Morgan. And then as I got a little bit older, there's a guy named Chris Burke who lived in Louisville. He was an ex-player, ex-MLB player, and he lives in Louisville, and he does an incredible job. Like he's one of the best disciplers I've ever had the experience or privilege to be around. And he kind of took me under his wing, and showed me what it looks like to be, a Christian father, a Christian athlete, a Christian worker. I was actually doing my internship under him. He owns a business there, where he gives lessons to kids, baseball lessons to kids.
Sure.
And he's the head of it. And so I was doing my internship to kind of learn about, what's it take to do a business like that. That was something I was interested in, once my career was over. And so I spent a ton of time with him. So I was, spending, 4 hours a day on average, I would say, with him, probably 4 to 5 times a week. And just hearing the way he talks, and, we would take drives to go see, professional players that he would help out. So we would be in the car for a couple hours at a time, and the music that he listens to, or hear him talking about his wife, hear him talking about his kids, being around him while he's with his kids. And, he was probably had the biggest impact on me in that way, like just showing me the ropes by doing life together, and this is how I do life. And, this is what it looks like to be a Christian in this lifestyle. And that was some of the most invaluable, opportunities and moments for me as a Christian was to be around him as often as I was. So, and then even since then, it's like almost every stage of my life, I've had somebody, to mentor me or to disciple me. So, those were the 2 biggest guys in my early faith, was Chris Morgan at Louisville, and then Chris Burke, even after the first Chris. So
something about that
guys.
name, Chris, right, Adam?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's good. It's just such an important thing for the listener, I hope, that's tuning in right now, that hears the importance of having a mentor and not trying to do this on your own. And yes, it's important to have Paul and Barnabas in your life, meaning, people who are sort of fellowshipping together. But you mentioned having these Pauls in your life, people who are older than you, that are wiser, that might have been in different stages of life, that can kind of come down and show you what they've learned through the years. And now you get to be a Paul to some other people, like you said, as well, even though you're still just turning 29 years old, and you're able to turn around and now be a Paul to somebody that's probably coming up themselves, right? That's so vital.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was one thing that Chris Burke, we call him Berkey. Berkey was, teaching us, as we had a group of guys that would do a Bible study with him when I was still in college. And he was like, you want to have a Paul in your life, and you want to have like a Timothy in your life, somebody, you want somebody, like you're saying, to look up to, and who has life experience and plenty of wisdom. But he was like, this concept of like, are you truly a disciple of Christ if you're not discipling someone else as well? Because, the Great Commission commands us to go and make disciples. And so if we're not actively making a disciple, are we being a disciple in that moment or in that stage of our life? And so he's like, that's important. You need somebody to look up to, and you need somebody that you're discipling. It's huge for your walk. And that's something I've taken to heart and tried my best to try and live out.
So I'm going to kind of pivot back and forth here into baseball, and then back out of baseball into ministry, because I forgot to ask you, and I really wanted to ask you this question. You make your major league debut in May of 2017, and maybe the next time we have you on, we'll share what that day was like, because I love the experience of that first time and talking and telling that story with a lot of guys that we have on. But I need to go to August of 2018. So it's your second year, and you had not one, not two, but 3 amazing defensive outfield home run robbings, I guess you call them, over a 6-game span, which is just incredible. You robbed 3 home runs, including 2 against the Yankees. And, your Twitter handle is Man of Steel, but you were stealing home runs that week. It's interesting to me that most guys who play the game, if they get 1 in a year, it's pretty good. And you got 3 in 6 days. What's your memories, and what was that experience like that week for you?
Yeah. So for the first 2, we were playing the Yankees at home. And I love playing the Yankees. I don't know why. It just seems like, they have that attitude about them, that they're better than everybody else. You know what I mean? That's the kind of attitude you want your team to have. And playing them, like, that they're going to give you their A game every time. And so you feel that energy, and I love that type of energy. So anyways, getting back to the first one, we're playing the Yankees. So it's one of my favorite series of the year is playing the Yankees. And the first ball that I robbed goes up, and it's just kind of like things happen fast on the field, and that's why as an athlete, I preach like fundamentals. Know the fundamentals so you can play fast, because once the game starts, it doesn't slow down,
Yeah.
And so things just kind of take over, catch the ball. I can't remember if that was the third. I don't think that was the third out. I think, funny enough, I think Hicks actually tagged up on the play. So it's like I rob a home run, but it was either that one or the next one that he tagged up on. So I catch it and I throw it in. I'm like, of course, great ball players are always looking for, an advantage, which is, he's a great player.
Yeah.
And so the funny thing is, so I make that play, and the next night, I'm pretty sure it was back-to-back nights. I'm going up for my first at bat, and Higashioka, I think is how you pronounce his name. He was their catcher. He still catches for them today. I step in for my first at bat, and he goes, "Hey man, incredible play last night. Like, you need to stop doing that," something along those lines, And I go, "Hey man, if you hit one, I'll let it go. Like, if you hit one, I won't rob it, and I have my bat. I don't remember what happens."
Yeah. And
then, like, within the next couple innings, he comes up and he hits one, and that was the guy that I robbed for the second one. And I catch that ball and throw it in, and I'm like, can't believe it. Like, I probably had this look on my face where I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. You know what I mean? Not because I robbed it, but because it was literally a guy that probably within the last 30 minutes, I told him, like, dude, I'll let it go if you hit it, and sorry about that.
That's
and
okay.
And so I go up to my next at bat, and he just looks at me and is shaking his head, which is a really funny story about that. He's an awesome guy, really cool guy. And then so we finish up there, and then I think the Indians came into town, and that ball that I robbed off of Yonder Alonso was, I would say, out of my entire career, probably the best catch I've ever made.
Wow.
It was really hard to get up. The ball was over the fence. I was able to, like, kind of bend over or like bend my back and get my arm over the fence a decent amount and make the play. And it was really cool. I had coaches come up to me and say, I've been watching baseball a long time, and that's probably the best home run robbery I've ever seen in person, and so that was cool. And then we actually signed Yonder in 2019, and such a cool guy. He's awesome. He was a guy that he kind of took me under his wing a little bit in 19 and was helping me out. And people would ask him about it, and he's like, that's my fault. If I would have done a couple more power cleans, before the game that day, that ball probably would have gone a little bit further and would have been a home run, And so that's just kind of the guy he is. And it's just funny how, this fraternity of baseball is so small, and stuff like that I feel like happens a lot, kind of something cool happens, but then there's a story within the story, and it's just a cool fraternity to be a part of.
You haven't robbed a home run since. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you're right. I haven't robbed a home run since. Yeah.
That shows you how difficult this is to do that. And you do 3 in 6 games, and then in 2.5 years, there hasn't been another one. Yeah,
it's a lot of luck, I would say. You know what I mean? Like, when it comes down to it, it's a really hard play to make. I think I've had opportunities to make maybe 1 or 2 more. And so it's a hard play, but at the end of the day, like, a guy has to hit the ball within 1 foot of the fence in a certain direction. You know what I mean? So it's a hard play to make, and it's just not a common thing,
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, Adam Engel, this has been great to catch up with you, to talk with you, talk some baseball, obviously talk Jesus as well. Before we let you go, I know you're involved with one of our partners and sponsors here at Sports Spectrum, Compassion International. They got a great initiative right now called Fill the Stadium. Tell me about your involvement in it and why you felt it was important to get behind what Compassion's doing, and certainly the Fill the Stadium initiative.
Yeah, so my wife and I, we were involved with Compassion on a much smaller scale starting in, I want to say 2017. We went to for King and Country and Casting Crowns concert in Louisville, Kentucky.
Sure.
It was a birthday gift for my wife, and we go down there, and incredible concert, man. Those guys are awesome. And right in the middle of For King and Country, they come on and Compassion comes on, and they spread their awareness, and they have a really cool video, and they ask everybody to support if they feel like that's something that they're led to do. And my wife and I looked at each other. We just had our first kid. And we're like, man, we can't look at these pictures of these little kids and say no. I think at that time it was like the first time we were parents, and we knew the love that we felt for our little ones, or our little one at the time. And we were like, we can't say no to this, so we take home, one of the packages that they had, prepared. And, it's one of our favorite things to do now is to write. We write letters to our little girl, and we try and send her Christmas gifts and things like that. And it's so fun to get letters back from her and send her letters as well. And then my wife approached me after a PAO conference last year in 2019, and I've been kind of like wanting to push her into something. You know what I mean? Like, I've been trying to get her involved with different things that is like her own. You know what I mean? Something that she's really passionate about. And because we have a cool program through the Players Trust where we can donate money that they match. It's like a matching program every year. So I'm like trying to like find different things. I'm like, babe, what do you want to, what's going to be your thing? And she's like, no, I think like our church does a really awesome program that I'm not going to go into, but that's what we've been supporting the last few years. And as much as I love supporting that, I'm like, babe, I want you to have something kind of your own, and then all of a sudden, like 2019 happens, PAO conference happens. And my wife's like, Adam, you've got to check this out. Like, this was so cool. I got to tell you about this, meeting that I went to. And I got to tell you about all of these different connections that God has put in my life, and the road that I've gone down, and all the ways that I feel like God has kind of been trying to get my attention. And I think this is it. And I'm like, at the time, I'm getting the chills thinking about it right now. I'm like, this is so cool. This is what I've wanted for my wife to see this, like such passion for something. And immediately I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, let's do some digging and figure this out. And that's when we got on a call with Ashley, and she talked to us, and she's been incredible throughout this entire experience, and just helping us out and helping us understand what exactly we're doing, and just, figuring out how we can help. And my wife, after the call, kind of looks up at me like, so is this it? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. And since then, like her passion's become my passion. And this is something that, we feel very strongly about. And we're excited to be on this team with all these guys. You can tell that there's a lot of people that are helping out, and they're very excited about it. We're very excited about it. And, hopefully we can get to the goal of the 70,000. I know, I haven't really given it an explanation of what exactly that we're doing, but yeah, we're definitely excited about this whole thing.
That's okay. I'll fill in the gaps a little bit. It's fillthestadium.com is the website, and people can just go right there and learn more about what Compassion is doing. But we're talking about 70,000 kids because of COVID being left potentially without a sponsorship. The conference where you went to and saw Compassion being spoken about, all those conferences stopped because of COVID. And suddenly 70,000 kids who would normally get a sponsor through a program like what you guys did at the concert, it's not happening for them. And the situation's obviously turned into a really dire situation for many of these kids and their families. And that's why we have this amazing initiative with Fill the Stadium that Compassion's doing. They're a sponsor and partner with us here at Sports Spectrum. And certainly a lot of our athletes and our PAO friends are getting on board with this. And we're trying to make a dent. We're trying to, basically fill the gap for the 70,000 kids that otherwise would be sponsored. So I love what you're doing, Adam. I love your wife and finding out that she has a passion for this as well. And, if you're listening right now, this is a great thing to get involved with. in terms of compassion. If you have a child of your own, imagine having a child and they don't know where their next meal's coming from, or their education, or, just food and clothing and things like that. That's why I think this is an important thing to get behind, and we love compassion and we love what they stand for. Again, the website is fillthestadium.com, and you can check it out and donate right there at the website, fillthestadium.com. Adam Engel, thank you, brother. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for joining us. All the best to you. I understand your fourth child is on the way in the spring, which we all should be praying for you and your wife. You got 4 kids under 5, brother. That's just, God's got to keep you busy that way. But congratulations and all the best to you, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And, wish you nothing but the best.
Great stuff there from Adam Engel, the Chicago White Sox outfielder. You can give him a follow on Twitter, manofsteel_10, and he's on Instagram at Adam T. Engel. Give him a follow on Twitter and Instagram, and let him know that you heard his story here right now on Sports Spectrum. Great stuff there from Adam Engel. Looking forward to the 2021 season, whatever that looks like. Hopefully it's a full 162 games. We'll have to see. I hope so. I think they've figured it out now. And yes, we're in the midst of a pandemic, but I think baseball will be able to play a whole season. That's my prayer. That's my hope, because these guys deserve a chance to play an entire year for working so hard to get to that place in the major leagues with the Chicago White Sox. Many thanks to Adam Engel for joining us here today on the show. We also want to thank our partners and sponsors, great partners, Ronald Blue Trust. They have the answers to your financial questions. ronblue.com is the website. Ronald Blue Trust is the organization, applying biblical wisdom, technical expertise, helping their clients make wise financial decisions, and experiencing clarity and confidence to leave a lasting legacy. Check them out again at ronblue.com, ronblue.com. We also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com, and do us one quick favor before we say goodbye. Whatever app you're listening to this podcast on, and of course we have a podcast network of shows now, do us a favor and click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode of this show or our other shows, Recalibrated, Table 40, and the Football Sunday podcast. Subscribe to all of those, part of the Sports Spectrum Podcast Network, and that way you never miss an episode of all the great content that we're sharing here with the Ministry of Sports Spectrum and our brand new, flourishing Sports Spectrum Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the show. Love you guys. Have a great rest of your day.